he
Isn't
does,
that
yeah.
the best? It's at my house, my daughter's quartet. It's just
Yeah, they are fun. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Public Works Committee meeting for Tuesday, Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2017. First order of business is roll call and determination of quorum. Brenda, when you're ready.
Doyle.
Here.
Estes. Here. Solomon. Here. Drew. Here. Nordstrom. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Brenda. Next order of business is to adopt the agenda. I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion.
If there are no changes. I have a motion by Solomon, second by Estes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Agenda is adopted. Now is the time for general public comment, which is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issues not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement thereon by unanimous vote of the aldermen present. I do have no general public comment forms, so we'll go ahead and move on to consent items 1 through 18. Once again, seeing no speaker request forms, I'll open and close public comment. Unless anybody waves me down, no arms are flying, so we're going to continue. Would committee members like to remove any items from the consent calendar for separate consideration? If not, I would entertain a motion to adopt the consent calendar. Motion by Drew, second by Nordstrom. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Items 1 through 18 carry. We are now on to non-consent items 19 through 20. Open public comment. I do have 2 speaker request forms. Mr. Jason Rankin. Did I get it right? Sir, if you'd approach the podium right over here, either mic is fine. And then state your name and address for the record, please, sir. And you will have 3 minutes to share with us here.
Ready?
Yep. Ready.
Jason Rankin. My home address is 2709 Eden Lane off of South Valley Drive. And then I also own a couple houses on South Valley Drive across from the Johnson Ranch subdivision is my main concern, I guess. Just that the road be upgraded before anything else happens in the field. So it's got a longer than 3-minute history. The stop sign got ran into in 2010. They found we had enough population density to fix the stop sign. They punched the connector in because there was a shooting thing and all that kind of stuff, and we didn't have an in and out on South Valley Drive. So the city punches a connector in on the Catron side, and then 2 years ago it was full of potholes and stuff. And as they were racing across there, and a high-speed chase or something, and a cop car hit the pothole, or I don't know all those stories. So I went to the county and had those potholes fixed up on top, but the county still says that's a gray area. Technically, the road doesn't exist between the city and Pennington County, so whatever needs to happen there. But, I count 73 new home sites. A quick Google thing says, the government says the average family has 1.9 cars per family, so that's another 150 cars roughly. That doesn't count the apartments, townhomes, the new commercial traffic that's going to be included on South Valley Drive. The St. Pat, they have a road here that connects St. Pat to the new development. How that's going to work or how that's going to play out, I find hard to believe, just because there's so much traffic there in the afternoon and in the morning and stuff. It's already a mess right there. I don't think South Valley Drive can handle it. It doesn't, it handles it now, barely. Yeah, the road as per the city engineers and stuff, when they would do the annex and all that paperwork and stuff, was rated very poor condition to begin with. Nobody seemed to want to take control of it. The county says it doesn't meet any of city standards as far as bringing streets up to what it needs to be now. So you're not going to step on the foot of progress, and that isn't my intention at all. But the substructure around it, the infrastructure around it, taking care of the people that live there already, I think need to be taken into account. Just bringing up the road. So, basics.
Thank you. Since really there are only 2 items that we're going to be discussing on the agenda, if you do, give me a nod if you have anything else you'd like to say, and I would have the committee entertain waiving the speaker time limit today.
I was responsible.
You guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Just 1 second.
Sure.
Okay, do you have a motion second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign?
Aye.
Okay. Go ahead. We'll give you some latitude today, sir.
Okay, so, I mean, when the stoplight got hit in 2010, they didn't want to put the stoplight up because we didn't have enough traffic. Well, so they deemed it necessary to put the stoplight back up. Okay, so what does that, I mean, it tells me that there's enough traffic per hour there to meet government regulation that we put the stoplight back up. Okay, so we have the flood and we have the shooting and we have this other stuff where nobody can get in and out of there because South Valley Drive was closed. So that's why they put the connector in years ago. Well, nobody wants to take control of a quarter mile of road up there. That's kind of the stepchild in the room. Nobody loves it. All right, well, so now you're going to put all this. We have another shooting on Longacre or something. Nobody can get through that way, so you got to come up the other way. That road definitely can't handle another, 300 cars a day. And there's no stoplight on Catron, so that's just going to create a bottleneck there. I scratch my head to where all these cars are going to go, and where if they do put a mall or a school or whatever, it doesn't say, but I just think somebody needs to think about upgrading South Valley Drive at least past Eden Lane, and then maybe doing the county still has plans to overlay all of it. Per this morning, anyway, they sent it to commission for funding and all that kind of stuff. So. South Valley Drive was kind of a kid nobody wanted. They annexed us. I get it. Somebody has to take care of not only all the lateral streets, which are questionable, but they're fine because most of them are cul-de-sacs. I think just the main thoroughfare is my major concern. There's people that walk up and down it. It's not well lit. There's absolutely no sidewalk. I pay to the drainage thing. There's no curb and gutter. I don't know. I just don't want it to be overlooked and all of a sudden have another 600 cars using it a day and kids in a park or, I don't know, whatever they're going to build and stuff like that, but just to make it more accessible and more public.
Okay. Well, we definitely appreciate your comments, and if any of the committee members have a question for you, when we get to that item, just hang out and they'll kind of flag you down, ask you to come up to the podium if you're willing. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Hani Shafi, who's speaking for the development. Shafi.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. I have, before you is the an aerial of the site. The area in the yellow is a donut hole that is in the county, and to the right of it is to the left of it is the South Valley Drive, and currently South Valley Drive is in the county and is being annexed with the property. The portion that is fronting our property is being annexed with this property. The top of the page is basically St. Patrick Street. There is currently an existing turn lane that is blocked, that is in this location, that is to turn left from St. Patrick Street into the property. The property itself is planned to be a mixed-use subdivision, as you could see with the, I don't know if
where this is at.
can they
Use your finger.
but can they change slides?
Oh,
Perfect, yeah, thank you. All right, we're gonna clear.
use your finger.
Oh, okay. We did that with this, okay. This is a layout of the subdivision. The area that is fronting St. Patrick Street and the area that is fronting Highway 44 is planned for commercial. Most of the commercial traffic, if not almost all of it goes into St. Patrick Street. The entrance into St. Patrick Street meets all the requirements, and we have checked that with the state. And its separation from both the lighted intersections is approximately 600 feet in each direction. South Valley Drive is classified as a collector street. Currently, it meets the requirements approximately. It is 23 foot wide. A collector street is a 24-foot wide street, is the requirement by the city, and it's 32 if it is got turn lanes. If you could imagine the traffic on Sheridan Lake Road is being handled by a 24-foot street, which is no different than the width of South Valley Drive. The city requirements are for basically curb and gutter and widening the road if a turn lane is needed. We retained a traffic engineer to analyze the site, and we have done traffic counts on the subdivision, on the existing roads. The goal of the subdivision is basically not low income, but affordable workforce housing that is safe. The houses that are going to be there are going to be complementary to the neighborhood. We're going to respect our neighbors and their rights and their properties. We intend to work with them to address any concerns that they have. Our letter of intent was sent to you folks, and it states what our intention is for the property. This is a picture of South Valley Drive looking north at the intersection with St. Patrick Street. This is a picture looking south at the same intersection. On the left-hand side is basically the subject property. This is the picture of the turn lane that is on St. Patrick Street that will be utilized to get into the property. There may be some improvements needed to that turn lane. We will wait until the traffic engineer finishes up before we submit the final plans for the subdivision. This is just the preliminary plans, which is basically showing what we intend to do. Your action today is basically our request is to appeal the denial of the request for exceptions to add curb and gutter and widening the road to 36 feet. The curb and gutter, if curb and gutter are added to the street, there will be drainage issues on the south side because the curb and gutter will be approximately almost a foot higher than most of those garages that are on the right-hand side of the road. So therefore, to add curb and gutter, the road needs to be reconstructed and lowered to accommodate the drainage. Such exceptions have been granted in the past. Approximately 1 mile away from this property, this is Family Thrift, and this property has been recently platted. This is Creek Drive, and this distance from our property to that corner is 3/4 of a mile, which is less than a mile. And as you look into the intersection, this is looking basically southeast at the intersection of St. Pat and Creek Drive. And this is looking up the road along Creek Drive. Creek Drive is an arterial classified road. You could see the condition of this road compared to the South Valley Drive. Other areas that have been granted exceptions is basically Sheridan Lake Road and approximately just south of the entrance to Red Rock. This here is basically the entrance to Countryside, and then this is the entrance to Red Rock Estates. There were 2 exceptions that were granted on that. This is a picture of the intersection. This is a picture looking up Sheridan Lake Road. Sheridan Lake Road, currently on that location, is 24 foot wide, in addition to the turn lane that is at Countryside. The speed limit on Sheridan Lake Road is about 45 to 50 miles an hour. The speed limit on South Valley Drive, as you saw from the previous pictures, is only 25 miles an hour. If somebody ran into a stop sign, they either must have been drinking or speeding. It's an enforcement issue. The exception on Sheridan Lake Road was approved by the staff, and it's basically waiving the principal arterial street improvements on Sheridan Lake Road. Currently, Sheridan Lake Road is paved but unimproved for miles in each direction, and future Sheridan Lake Road improvements should be coordinated with Pennington County. I tell you what, South Valley Drive does not have a foot of curb and gutter the entire length of South Valley Drive. The side street is a local street, and it is 20 foot, even though the city asked for 26 feet. And it does not have a curb and gutter, and that exception was also approved. Of course, both of them were approved with a WARP, which is basically a waiver of right to protest future assessment, and we are willing to do the same thing. There are several streets that were similar, and I'm not going to bore you with them. These are some of the raw traffic counts that are being currently used by the model. These are the 2-hour traffic counts in the AM. You could see that those traffic counts on South Valley Drive are nearly about 155 cars in 2 hours. I guarantee you the common sense at Orchard Meadows has more traffic than that. These are some of the stipulations that you read them. Incidentally, this is the criteria for the city. Without a turn lane, a collector road with no parking is 24 feet, and it is 32 feet if it has a turn lane. We do not intend to have any parking along this road. We've done a lot of projects. This is one of our projects at Orchard Meadows. We put curb and gutter and drainage and everything else that is needed for the subdivision. The goal of our project, this is a picture of some of the quality of the work. The goal of the project is not really to compromise the quality that is being done in the infrastructure. I have a lot of pictures of the neighborhood and what have you on west of the neighborhood. Garden Lane or Eden Lane don't have any curb and gutter on them. We intend actually with our subdivision, we intend to solve some of the drainage problems that they may have, or the folks, our neighbors, may have within their subdivisions. So we're actually enhancing some of that stuff. We don't mind, signing a waiver of right to protest future assessment, similar to what the city has done in the past, and we're willing to do that. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions. And I have additional information within the PowerPoint, but I don't want to bore you with too much details. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shafi. And is it safe to consider that you're speaking on number 19 rather than just the public comment period, since this was your appeal?
Yes, please.
Okay. And you're available for questions, I would
Yes, ma'am.
presume. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So we are now on to number 19, which is an appeal of denial of request from KTM Design Solutions for an exception to waive the requirements for subdivision improvements on South Valley Drive. The floor is open. We'll go to Mr. Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This one's a very complicated issue for me, and part of the reason is that I haven't had a chance to read through the entire chapter of Title 16, and I see Ted is in the audience, and if I can ask a question of Mr. Tech or Ted Johnson.
Certainly, we'll refer to Mr. Tech first and see what happens.
Dale, could you give us a brief summary of what Title 16 means and what that is trying to address in a situation like this?
Title 16 of our municipal code is about subdivisions, and it lays out the process for platting, and it also lays out the process for improvements. Simply stated, that's really what Title 16 is about.
Thank you. Some of the other issues that I've got trying to understand a little bit farther is that we've got several other examples, as Mr. Haney gave us, Shafi gave us as examples throughout the city that we've given the exceptions for. And a couple of them I believe I've voted against, but in my tenure on the council, I haven't supported the waiving of, granting the appeal through a warp, so I've done it that way. And in this one here is a little bit more complicated for me because of the South Valley Drive is still a county road. Am I correct on that, Mr. Tech?
Yes.
And that's another issue, is that we've got to address fixing a county road. And that's part of the problem I'm having with this. And the other part of it has to do with the other exceptions that we've done within the city. As Mr. Shafi pointed out in his presentation. And so it's starting to show that we need to address this in a different fashion, whether it's on this project or future projects, but warps are becoming a real problem. And I just haven't made up my mind how I'm going to vote on this. So Mr. Shafi, if you could answer a question for me. I assume you're familiar with Title 16, how that works. And that's my understanding why the staff made the recommendation to deny your request.
I don't really know what part of Title 16 that is being referred to. If you could read it to me or that part, I'll be more than happy to answer that.
And I'll have Mr. Tech answer that, but my understanding of that, it has to do with primarily based on the traffic counts. We have to look at or require, probably in this case, require 3 lanes over there. So if I can have Mr. Tech answer that specific question on what that would do for this South Valley Drive. Would it be 3 lanes?
We don't know. As Mr. Haney Shafi had indicated, they're working on a traffic study. We have not seen that, so we don't know what that traffic study will say.
Thank you. Mr. Shafi, on the traffic study, you are in the process of, or you have commissioned a traffic study, am I correct?
Yes, and if I may, yes, we have commissioned a traffic study. As part of the traffic study, we performed the traffic counts at the pertaining intersections. And I want to just add to your comments, Mr. Nordstrom.
Yes.
The exceptions that were approved on Sheridan Lake Road, they are on county roads similar to mine, even though mine is being annexed. So we need to have consistency in our procedures. None of the city ordinances that pertain to annexation or the use of the warp have changed since that date. And none of the criteria or the subdivision regulations have changed. And so to really treat a different subdivision differently, it will be unfair. The Sheridan Lake Road traffic counts, I guarantee you, they are at least, if not 3, they might be 10 times as much as the traffic counts on South Valley Drive. Creek Drive, that was recently approved, is no different than mine, and it's within 3/4 of a mile of mine. And they have traffic counts, most likely if they develop as they propose, will have traffic counts a lot higher than what our subdivision is going to generate.
Thank you. And then on one of your pictures that showed on South Creek Drive, we got a major pothole that needs to be fixed. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. The complicated part for me, Mr. Shafi, is that I like what your intent for this project is. And just as a layperson looking at the chart or the picture or the graph that you put up here, demonstrates that for me, a lot of that traffic would be going out on the St. Patrick Street. So South Valley Drive wouldn't be having that much volume increase. That's just a layperson's understanding of it. But how long do we have to wait for that traffic impact study to be completed?
The traffic study will be completed as soon as the traffic engineer finishes the modeling. We have commissioned that right away. The critical deal on this subdivision is we're not submitting final plans. For the subdivision, we have commissioned the traffic study, even though it is not required for the phase that we're doing currently. We commissioned that because we do things in such a way where we look at the whole picture and we try to accommodate any safety concerns that may come up. You know, the two lots that we're currently platting, they do not require a traffic study, but we started the traffic study before even anybody requested it. So we're hoping that it will be done soon and will be submitted with the final design plans for the subdivision.
And I was noticing within one of the stipulations that they were recommending a traffic impact study on that. So that's just the way I read it. So if I'm in error on that, please let me know. That was one of the stipulations, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So I'm just having a real issue with this. We're starting to have more and more of these types of situations starting to show up. And I don't know if the warp is a good answer for doing this. And however my colleagues want to vote on this, I don't know where I'm at just yet on this. Primarily just because of warps, how that's done. And they're coming back to bite us. And this is a good example of what we're starting to see in other areas of the city that you just mentioned. So thank you. Go ahead.
If I could mention this, we are preaching, as a city, consistency is really important, and we have to do what we say, and we have to mean what we say. When we say we want affordable housing within our community, and we go spend the taxpayers' money to go try to do affordable housing, and somebody comes up and try to do that, and you folks put in stipulations that are far beyond what you have required of others in similar situations up to date, that is not doing what you say, and that is not meaning what you say. So let's put our actions where our mouth is. And if we're going to do things as a community, we have to do them right. And when we want to apply the rules, we should apply them consistently to everybody, especially in this case, because the intent of this project is affordable housing, and we are all striving to do that. The profit margin on this is probably very small. To do anything on South Valley Drive will add to the cost, which will add to the cost of the affordable homes.
Thank you, Henny. I really appreciate those comments. Thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. It's just that we've got to work out a better process than what we're doing. It's either all in or all out, one or the other. And right now, I'm just not comfortable with warps in general anyway. And so this is another case where I've got some other issues besides just this. Thank you. I'll yield.
Mr. Solomon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could direct a question to Dale Tech, please.
Please do.
Dale, Mr. Shaffey mentioned one of his concerns with curb and gutter was potential drainage issues on the south side, I assume, of South Valley Drive. Would that be what you would notice as well?
I believe if I was interpreting Mr. Shaffey's comment is if you just add curb and gutter to the existing road on one side, it doesn't work. It's a rural section. To effectively put curb and gutter on that road, you've got to rebuild the entire road, lower the section so the curb and the gutter, the properties adjacent to it can still drain into the street. I think that's what he's referring to.
So by requiring this on that side, are we looking at some potential issues then?
I guess I should clarify, staff's recommendation is South Valley Drive needs to be improved, not just one side, the entire roadway. So Mr. Shaffey, I believe, is making the argument that he would just be responsible for putting curb in on one side. Our recommendation is South Valley Drive needs to be improved.
The other question I have is, with these kinds of roads that are right in between the city and the county, and I heard Jason's, I like your first name, Jason's comments out there about the county, all the issues that road has, and the county says talk to the city says talk to the county. What's your take on these kind of roads that sit right in between?
Well, what Jason's referring to, there's a section of roadway up the hill that is not in city limits. It's in the county. And I think it's about a half-mile stretch. So it's not in the city limits of the city of Rapid City, therefore we don't have any responsibility or probably jurisdiction to go out there and maintain the road. The county road system works a little differently than the city road system, and they take official action to add roadways onto their system. As I understand it, that road was never added to the county road system. So it's a public road that exists in the county that's not on the county road system. So, and it's not in the city limits, therefore it's not a city street. So yes, indeed, it is kind of a gray area. The city and the county did cost share to make repairs to that road this past year. So there was some effort made by both entities to try to maintain that road that really neither entity is responsible for. As far as the road immediately adjacent to Mr. Shaffey's Johnson Ranch development, it's a county road. It's on their county system. They're responsible for the maintenance. However, they've indicated that, at least the county highway department's indicated through their comments, that the road needs to be improved or the city needs to annex it. So that was the comment that they made, and Mr. Haney Shaffey has indicated that he's also made a request to annex that section of road adjacent to his development.
So we have a road within the county and right at the city limits that nobody has responsibility for, a section of road. That's what I'm hearing?
Correct, but not adjacent to this development.
Yeah.
It's up the roadways.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I'm going to yield the floor for now.
Sure.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Drew, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a couple of questions for Hanny Shaffey, if I could, please. Hi, Mr. Shaffey. When you're talking about affordable work housing, what are we looking at for these projects once they're done? Do you have an estimate on how much the homes will cost?
The lots will be between $29,000 to $35,000. The homes will be between $140,000 to $190,000, which is consistent with the evaluation of homes within the area, at the upper end of that area of town. The goal is to, there are no lots that are available within our community that are within that price range. And it's the goal of building the homes is actually to build quality homes. And, and if I may add, as far as the quality of the roads in that part of town, South Valley Drive should be the least of your worries compared to the rest of the roads within that part of town. How many of you folks have driven that part of town? I mean, the internal part of town. May I show some slides that go to the public that show the roads within that area of town?
It's not germane to this issue, but we're all available to drive it and have taken a look at it. So please continue answering Alderwoman Drew's comments.
The apartments are intended to be affordable, but we manage our apartments in such a way where the quality is maintained at the upper level. We are very known to have very, 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 if not the least, maybe not even any police calls in any of our structures. So it's like we have maintained affordability and still maintained a high quality in each one of our developments. And I think adding the entire replacement of South Valley Drive in this subdivision, which is inconsistent with what you folks have done in any other subdivision that is not even made for affordable housing, You have never requested that of any subdivision, and I'll show you more. I got about 20 different subdivisions that are currently under constructions or have been recently finished that are similar to this.
And a comment that you made about another subdivision you're working on made me think that you did the curb and gutter by choice. That's not a choice, is it, in these areas?
It's actually, the city ordinance allows for rural section, where rural section is basically pavement without curb and gutter. And you could look at the city ordinance, and actually I could refer you to the exact one. And it allows, basically section 2-2-12 allows for a rural section, which is basically a section of road that does not have curb and gutter. Sheridan Lake Road has no curb and gutter, neither does Highway 44, neither does Oakville Road. Curb and gutter is intended for drainage, not safety. The road ditches actually do perform better than curb and gutter because they filter the water before it goes into the creek. And you could read the School of Mines research on it. Scott Connor has actually published papers on it. So it's...
I guess I was wondering about the streets inside the subdivision. Once the homes are up, you'd consider that part of the project, the curb and gutter would be just...
Yes, they would all be curb and gutter, yes.
Well, I'm leaning towards granting appeal in this particular case because I just really want to see more affordable housing in the city. And for me, that really... hits a lot of the buttons I'm interested in, and the interest of fairness. I think asking you to do curb and gutter on the South Valley Drive is kind of a tall order, and I wouldn't be against a warp, so thank you.
Alderman Estes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this problem is just going to keep reoccurring as we grow out into the county. So, Mr. Shaffey, I guess, so what the proposal to annex South Valley Drive is only, I would guess, to the south boundary of your development, is it? Would
Yes,
that
sir.
be correct?
Yes, sir.
So then the balance of South Valley Drive would remain in the county?
Yes, sir.
And you may not want to answer this question, but well, I guess I won't know unless I ask. So, once this, if you did the whole project, will there be a request for a TIF?
No, my letter is very clear. We are not looking for any TIF or any subsidy from the government, any government agency whatsoever on this project.
So the reason I ask that, because we get thrown a lot of different circumstances. And I'm thinking of the Elm Street deal where we had a warp, and then 20 years later we decided, well, it's not fair to hit those people with a warp, but the developer's paying for their half, and the city's paying for the other half, and any oversize. Could anybody answer me? Once this street is done, are there any oversized water, sewer utilities in this road?
If I may answer that question, because actually I'm sure Mr. Tech will probably agree with me. The stipulation in the staff report is clear that since this subdivision is being served by Rapid Valley Sanitary District, and they have a master plan to have a 12-inch water main surrounding or within the subdivision. Their board met last night, and they agreed with our proposal, which is basically installing a 12-inch water main within the subdivision, which basically satisfies their needs, even though the water main is not required for the subdivision, and Rapid Valley does not pay oversized cost. We are within the city limits. If it was a city project, the city would have paid the oversized, but we're not nickel-diming the project. That's a minor cost compared to this, the cost of South Valley Drive. So the water and sewer means there is no oversizing along the roads, and Rapid Valley does not pay any oversized cost.
Okay. So one of my concerns, one of the problems we all have is that we have CIP to fix our roads, and right now, even if somebody does build a new road, it goes into about 140-year life cycle expectancy, and And so I mean, the difference here, we're annexing another piece of stretch of road in that's going to need some work over time, and we'll have to, at some point in time, figure out how to pay for it. So this generates my next question, Mr. Shabby. If TIF financing were allowed on your project to pay for that road, would you accept that? I mean, if you know, I'm just trying to figure out a financing mechanism for us to get that road paid, figure out how to get that road paid for.
I'll be more than happy to help with it as long as, because I'm trying not to really associate my name with thefts at all anymore.
Well,
You know,
well,
so it's like, it seems like you
I
go to the
underst-
chopping block. So if the city sponsors the TIF, I'll be more than happy to go borrow the money to fund the TIF, but I would not be the sponsor of the TIF.
Okay, well, and the only reason I guess I get in trouble because I sit here and I think out loud, and right now, I'm not going to vote to grant your appeal because I want to think about this a little more, but I think we've got to figure out if we're going to, you know, I understand that I've developed some lots. I mean, if you make a guy pay for the roads, then you're not going to get $29,000 and $34,000 lots. The math is pretty darn simple, but we got to figure out how, when you got an opportunity, and it's like I tried to, when I was talking about up at Highway 16. Okay, we have a flashing red light here that says development, development, development. We're going to have assessed valuation going here, and if we got to figure out how to finance to fix this road, that's an opportunity. Now, I know a lot of people are against TIFs, but in my mind, it's a painless way to get something done. So
I'll even go further than that, you know, if I may, Madam Chair.
Certainly.
I asked you a question, didn't I?
Yeah, okay, sorry, Mr. Estes.
No, go ahead.
If it satisfies the council, which has never been done before, okay, I calculated roughly what it would cost for my side of the curb and gutter and half of the addition of one lane. And actually, I had two people in the office, one of them is staff and one is not a staff, to review the numbers with me, and I did not bring them over. It was approximately, without the major add-in or what have you, and removing existing pavement or what have you, it was about $100,000. And I'll be more than happy to give you surety for that amount until you replace the road, and I could continue to renew the surety until you replace it, and you could apply that $100,000 for the widening of the road. And if you don't like the surety, I know this will cut down in the process, in the price of those lots, because that $100,000 will be added to the cost of the lots. Don't take me wrong, because, you know, Mr. Assis, you know how difficult it is to really bring lots within that price range. You know, so it's like, I'll be more than happy to write you the $100,000 check, and you could use it for anything you wish, including that road. You know, that's the only thing I could do, which is nobody has made that offer before. You know, I'm willing to fund the TIF if you sponsor it, and I'm willing to give you my fair share of what the improvement would have been before you even do the improvements. But I don't want your staff to be tacking in a gold-plated road and tell me, hey, we want to have this and this and that, and all of a sudden my share is $500,000, and your lots are going to be $50,000 instead of $34,000, while you're giving money to other people to do affordable housing. Thank you.
Thanks. You know, and I don't know what the whole road costs, and I know that our city finance officers warned me, has told me that, you know, and perhaps the surety way is the way to go, and we just need to come up with the cash on our side to do the other half or something. But I just hate. I mean, I see this as an opportunity and a time to try to figure out some financing to get the darn thing done. So, as I stated, if I had to vote right now, I'm not going to vote for the appeal, but that means there's other studying I want to do on this, and I yield. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Estes. I see we do have some more speakers. They've agreed to give me some latitude here as the chair. Mr. Shaffey, if you would real quick, sometimes it's hard to multitask up here. How many units single-family units are on this Johnson Ranch property?
I think there is 64 or 68, maybe 73. Yeah, I really never even counted those.
Would you remember 73-ish? Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
73, yeah.
Thank you, sir. And how many living units do you expect within the multifamily housing parcels?
For that size of lot, because we try not to really crowd them, you probably looked at Homestead Garden apartments that we built and across from Valley View School. We probably have in that lot about 100 units.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Tech.
But may I say, because I don't want to deceive you, we're working with a nonprofit that may use that lot for something with a lot less intensity than 100 apartments.
Okay,
And I cannot disclose that at this time.
not a problem. Mr. Tech, do we have a timeline for reconstructing South Valley Drive? As you know, when we forced that annexation, it was quite an inheritance.
We have a 5-year capital improvement plan. 2 months ago, we didn't know this project existed, what Mr. Shaffey's proposing. And to get it annexed, we have literally hundreds of miles of roads that are in the same situation as South Valley Drive. So a simple answer to your question is, we've got no plan to do anything with
Okay, so refresh
South
my
Valley
memory
Drive.
then. When we did that annexation, it was not the road.
Correct.
Or pieces of the road, it was just some of those adjacent properties. So we still have a little donut hole out there.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I won't go into all the other examples that Mr. Shaffey posed, but if there is one or more that you can recollect on, the Creek Drive one comes to mind, saying that these exceptions were granted. What I'm curious about is if staff recommended these exceptions, or if it's something the council came in after staff recommendation and decided on. Do you have any recollection on that, or is that something you can get us?
I don't have any recollection. I think Mr. Shaffey had indicated with what he had shown up there, at least for the Sheridan Lake Road and Croyle Avenue property, that was a single commercial lot. I think that was a consolidation of a number of lots that they replatted. Staff's recommendation was to approve the exception with the warp. That was what it said right on the thing. As far as the other ones, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. We can research that, and I could have answers for you on Monday.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so yes, I have driven out there on multiple occasions. I grew up out there, and it was in disrepair then, which I won't say how many years ago that was. But Dale, with the extra traffic demands, yeah, we're not going to talk about age. With the extra traffic demands and the increased degradation, right now, aside from this piece that's getting annexed in, I mean, the rest of it's still going to be within the county. So we'd still have major issues with this area.
Well, I can't speak to the county. They have a maintenance program for their roads, a half mile south of Mr. Shaffey's proposed development, I believe, is County Road. They do regular chip seals. I think Jason indicated that they were planning on doing some other things out there. I don't know what that means, but
So if he was going to curb and gutter to Eden Lane?
If you wouldn't mind approaching the podium so we can all hear you and it can get on the record. That way our colleagues that aren't here today can get your information as well.
The assistant supervisor or superintendent for the county said that whatever happens to South Valley Drive proper, right adjacent to the subdivision and stuff, they're going to chip seal the rest of it anyway, but they're going to stop at Fairmont on top of the hill because the gray area still exists up on top. And then he said something about the city punching Minnesota through. I don't understand punching Fairmont or Minnesota through to a gray street, which doesn't even exist technically. So I didn't understand that part of what he was saying. But either way, the county said he's going to stop at Fairmont.
Okay.
And
thank you.
that's right up on top of the hill.
Right on top of the hill, right. So I'm wondering, Dale, would it be possible for us to connect with the county prior to Tuesday's meeting and just kind of get a recap of what's going on, because,
Well, we've met regularly on this. I think Alderman Estes was even involved in some discussions we had nearly a year ago about doing the repair in the gray area. Minnesota Street, where it connects to Elkvale Road or Catron Boulevard, that is a city street. We built it. It's in city-owned right-of-way. We maintain it. So on the very south end there, and then there will be a signal installed there as part of the East Minnesota Elkvale Road signal that was approved by council here a number of months ago. So I don't think we're going to make any headway between now and Monday or now and July as far as the gray area. That's not within the city.
not referencing the gray area. I'm just
Okay.
referencing if there's this section as you're entering this development that Mr. Shaffey is responsible for unless we grant his appeal, grant this exception, the remainder up to the gray area. I mean, if it's in the works, to what scope, to what scale are they planning on reconstructing?
Yeah,
Is it
I
just-
can certainly touch base with them and try to get an understanding of that. So.
Okay. Another question I have is, you know, one of the things that warps have done, it's gotten people in trouble. I mean, you know, the council has granted warps, and the choices come down to hitting the adjacent property owners with hefty assessments. In this case, these are residents. I mean, it's not businesses. It's, you know, people like yourself that would potentially get hit with these types of assessments sometime down the road. So I would encourage us all to be cognizant of that. But the question I'm leading to is, we're not asking him to build half the road. We're asking him to put these improvements in the full length up to the edge of his development.
That's correct.
Okay. Is the other half are the property owners on the west side of South Valley Drive getting assessed for that half, or is he responsible for the full section?
Our criteria says if there's public right-of-way there, it needs to be improved. That's the interpretation that city staff has. Mr. Shaffey has presented a case saying, hey, I should only be responsible for half of it. I'm willing to pony up some dollars for my half. The other half, city, you worry about. So there's no plan in the works for the city to do an assess project out there to make improvements to the road and assess the citizens that live on the west side, any part of the road system. So there's nothing in the works there.
Okay. I'll yield for now. Mr. Nordstrom, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may make a motion to continue this for 2 weeks? I'm not here in a second.
Well, I have a motion. I think I'm hearing people muttering questions under their breath as to.
Okay. If I may continue then.
Well,
Go ahead.
okay. Mr. Shaffey, would that create any undue delays?
Yes, it would, actually. You know, just to give you an idea, folks, a couple of things that we forget. This road has been in existence probably for 40 years, 50 years, and it existed in the condition that it is today. Most roads are rebuilt within that period of time. So the road is overdue for reconstruction. If I may, Madam Chair and members of the Commission, I would like to add just about 10 slides, if possible.
Oh, sir, we're
Okay,
debating
okay,
motions
I will
at this
cut,
point.
I will cut this. The other thing is, the road is overdue for replacement, you know, so it could be replaced. The delay of the continuation, the nonprofit is actually being donated to, on top of the affordable housing, about $500,000 instead of the city making about a lot more money to that nonprofit than what we're giving them. Delaying it will actually force them into losing about $2 million grant. And it's up to you folks how you want to do it.
Okay, fair enough. Does that change your motion, Mr. Nordstrom? Okay.
Yeah,
Mr. Solomon.
If I may continue, what I would like to see, in addition to the comments that Alderman Estes made, is let's take a serious look at that. I think that's a reasonable compromise. Plus also, I would like to see the traffic impact study, the results of that as well, to be included in that potential if we go through the route of a TIF. From the city side being the sponsor of it, I don't know enough yet about the practicality of doing a TIF over there yet, so I would like to have some experts take a look at doing a TIF in that area, if we even can do a TIF. I like the idea. However, there needs to, in my mind, I think we need to do some more examinations of this.
I think we'd also need to annex the entire portion, which we
Exactly.
don't. But I know that, I mean, the condition of it, a TIF would be a blessing out there if it were ours to contend with. Mr. Solomon,
you.
would you still like to speak?
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
So he didn't get a second, so we do not have a motion on the floor.
Correct. There is
I
no
would-
motion on the floor.
I would like to make a motion that we actually send this on to council without recommendation, if I can get a second and hold the floor. And the reason I say that is just to continue the process. I would like us to have a decision on Tuesday evening. It's only fair to Mr. Shaffey and the organizations that are waiting. We clearly have a lot to mull over, and I believe there's some philosophical discussions that'll need to take place with the council as a whole. So rather than us recommending today, I think further discussion will take place. Maybe Mr. Shaffey want to share those additional slides that he wanted to share today at the Tuesday night meeting, and then we can walk away Tuesday night with a decision one way or the other.
Okay, and I just want to stress that this issue should not be held ransom over the potential of a TIF either. That is a discussion that would need to come later. Okay, so the motion on the floor is to send this to council for Tuesday night without recommendation. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Nordstrom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify on my point is that I'm not comfortable with sending anything to the full council without recommendation. And this is one of those cases where I think it's a good example. We've got to do some more vetting on it, on this process before we even have a full council discussion. So as a rule of thumb, I just don't really like sending items to the council without a recommendation.
Well, if I may, I mean, there are still opportunities to do some vetting prior to Tuesday's meeting, and based on some of the questions that we've had, there should be more information forthcoming. Mr. Estes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can support just going to council without recommendation, and more, I got to quit thinking from the dais, because the more I think about it, the TIF, for this size of a project, the TIF probably doesn't make any sense, but we just had something happen that I don't know that anybody's ever happened, and I believe Mr. Haney just offered to put some money in surety for your half based upon an agreeable cost estimate, is what I think I heard, so I think we got stuff to think about here, and so I'm gonna support going to council without recommendation today. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is to send to council without recommendation at this point for further study. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Chair votes aye. Brenda? Thank you, everybody. We're on to item number 20, which is generically titled Sidewalk Discussion. I see, Mr. Tech, thank you for printing out all of the related ordinances. That is very helpful. And just as a recap, this is something that the council has requested to take a look, actually done a sidewalk needs assessment, I guess, or an inventory throughout the city, looking at areas where we could do that are fully built out, and it's time to get these things put in because so many exceptions have been granted over the years that we have a lot of non-contiguous sections as well as just non-existent sections. And I don't know if you've ever seen someone with a wheelchair or a stroller or, you know, in a snowstorm trying to get through some of these areas. It's a sad sight to see. I will yield the floor, and hopefully we can come to some sort of direction for staff. And thank you for putting all of this together. I know it's been quite a process. Mr. Solomon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to make a motion that we acknowledge the report that Mr. Tech has given us, and that we, thank you, and if I can hold the floor.
Sounded like that was an and motion.
Acknowledge the report given to us from Mr. Tech. I got a second, and if I could.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, retain the floor. He gave us some great items to look through here, and I think I'd like to, as part of my motion, have a just further discussion at the first Public Works meeting in March so that we can review this procedure and options that he has given us here further, I guess, because it's kind of these are some big decisions. So if that's okay, Mr. Tech, looks like he wants to say something.
Yeah, if I could just make a quick comment here. Yeah, the packet that I set in front of you today There was questions about the last discussion at council is what's the process? Well, you've heard of a 12-step program. Well, we've got a 13-step process here for how you go about ordering in sidewalks and assessing them. So this is one part of the discussion is just what the process is. And then we never did come to any resolution as far as where you want to put sidewalks in. Staff has a recommendation. If you're going to start somewhere, we believe Deadwood Avenue is a good candidate. We still believe that's a valid recommendation. So I just wanted to throw that out there, but my staff did a tremendous job of putting all this together as far as what the process is for moving forward with ordering in sidewalks and subsequent assessment that would go along with it.
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam
Estes.
Chair. And Dale, thanks so much for this. And since Deadwood Avenue happens to be in my ward, Ward 5, I think we should come up with a project in each ward and then draw straws as to where we start. Thank you.
And if I recall, that was actually the question that most delayed us was, are we going to spread the pain out, proverbially speaking, or were we just going to pick one project that was, the epitome of what we're talking about here? Mr. Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was primarily going by the map, so, and just the number of lots that need to be addressed for installation of sidewalks. And I think, sorry, Mr. Estes, I think that's your area up there on Deadwood Avenue. And then maybe using that as a pilot program, if you will, and seeing what public interest is generated from that, and then what kind of feedback we get off of it as well. The main thing that I want to make sure is that if the people do not go through this and do it, not voluntarily do it, what's the next step in the process that we have to deal with on that? So, and I understand the assessments and all of that stuff, but there's some nuances in between each one of those steps. So just what we have to do is I need a little bit of a clearer understanding how to do that. But I really support this plan and looking forward to seeing a priority list coming forward to us.
If I may, we've been given everything that we've asked for. The inventory has been done for quite some time. The list of highest needs, really, where they fit the criteria that we gave staff to look at. The only question we had was, and I think it speaks to your point, is how are the affected parties notified? And what has been linked to this item clearly spells that out. It's up to the council to make a motion to direct one or more segments of this in, and then people are notified, and then they have their due process. Am I understanding that? Yes. So, I think it may be time. I can't make a motion, obviously, but I think it may be time to start walking the talk. Personally,
I would change it.
unless I hear there is a motion on the floor to continue this to first Public Works meeting in March? Is that what you said?
Well,
Or do you not know?
yeah.
It is Valentine's Day.
Like the rest of the council, I know what I want to do. I just didn't know how much more discussion we needed to have on this, and I know that we came today with this, acknowledging this report, so I did want to acknowledge that. If we wanted to make a recommendation today on a pilot, maybe not all 6 areas, but maybe one of the top priority, and see how that goes so we understand this process much better, I would certainly entertain that.
So does that mean you're withdrawing your motion?
I will withdraw it if somebody.
Okay, so if we have a substitute motion, then that will be overrun. Mr. Estes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a problem with putting this up to March, and I don't think that takes away from us walking the walk or walking, talking, whatever the heck it is called. But I think that we've got everything we need. This is the first time we've seen this 13-step plan, And I think that if I'm going to vote to assess and order sidewalks in on Deadwood Avenue, I better know exactly what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. So when I start getting calls and people say, did you know that this is how? No, I didn't know that, you know, so I better know what the heck, I better know everything about what I'm going to vote on. So I'm willing to take the pain to vote on. The Deadwood Avenue's been the chosen one, but I want, you know, I don't want to have 13 steps of the process given to me and 30 minutes later vote on it. I want to make sure that I fully understand the process so that when somebody takes my pound of flesh, that I can sit here and say, you know what, I know exactly what I supported. So thank you.
Alderwoman Drew.
Well, Ward 5 is my ward too, and so I'll be looking at the same kind of challenges that Alderman Estes will be looking at. However, as we look forward to this city growing and to be the kind of community I want to live in and families want to live in, we have to go ahead and go through the pain of putting in sidewalks. And there are demand paths there. We have to understand people are already using that area as a walking path. And as Alderwoman Doyle pointed out at the beginning of this, have you ever seen somebody with a stroller or trying to make it up that hill that's maybe got some kind of walking problem? It's just very difficult. So I think we really have to look at long-range fixes to something that's been going on in our city for a very long time, and that's ordering in sidewalks, as painful as it might be. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman Drew. Motion on the floor is to continue to the first Public Works meeting in March so that everybody is comfortable with the process. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion does carry. I have a motion to adjourn by Estes, second by Solomon. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.